If I had to pick the exact moment my life split in two, it wasn't a car crash, it wasn't a breakup, it wasn't some dramatic Hollywood scene. No, it was quieter, meaner, almost surgical. It was the night I got erased. My name's Emily Carson. I'm 32 and I live in a tiny apartment in Portland, Virginia. Not the artsy Portland everyone imagines, with lavender lattes and rescue greyhounds. My Portland has cornfields, wet sidewalks, pickup trucks, and a Kroger that closes too early. And that night, none of it mattered. It was Mother's Day Eve. While normal families were buying flowers or Hallmark cards, my parents were hosting a party designed to make the world gasp. Chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a palace, a string quartet playing something classical but expensive, imported cheeses that smelled faintly of pretension. Their Richmond mansion wasn't just big, it was the kind of big where you needed a GPS to find the bathroom. My siblings were already there. Vanessa, golden child, hair perfect, heels clicking like a drumline, married to some investment banker who probably counts money for breakfast. Brad, dad's golden boy, heir apparent of Carson Industrial Solutions, aka the family money factory. And me? I was helping my cousin Rachel arrange dessert trays, because apparently that's the only role my family thinks suits me, the extra. The side character, the one you never really introduce. Around 7:54 p.m., I checked my phone. Not to text, not to scroll, just a casual peek to see if my friend could swap shifts. Instead, I saw something else. The family WhatsApp group. Except, I wasn't in it. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe I archived it. Maybe I'd tapped the wrong button. Then, the notification hit me like a punch in the gut. Strong, shocked emphasis. You were removed from Carson family. Removed. Like a stain. Like an unwanted guest. Like someone quietly wiping fingerprints off a crime scene. And then I saw the message, the one my mother sent right after erasing me, addressed to everyone else. Angry, hurt tone. All my children are successful except Emily. She chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer acknowledge her as my daughter. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I froze. My body went into autopilot, stacking cupcakes with hands that felt like lead, while my brain replayed the words over and over, like a broken TikTok loop. Frustrated, tense tone. Vanessa strutted by, heels clicking like a drumbeat in my skull. Emily, grab more sparkling water. People are getting thirsty. Not a glance, not a smile. Just orders like I was staff. I nodded. I smiled. I smiled until my face hurt, until my teeth were sore. Inside, I was screaming. My chest a hollow cave where air refused to reach. Soft, reflective tone. After the last guest left and the string quartet packed up, Rachel leaned in, voice trembling. Emily, are you okay? I saw the message. Broken, ironic laugh. Yeah, totally fine, I said. Couldn't be better. But I wasn't. Years of being the background character slammed me all at once. Vanessa's achievements, Brad's inheritance, my life, the one I'd built quietly, dismissed in a single sentence, all because I chose to teach kids to read in a classroom that smelled like chalk and disinfectant. That was my crime. That was my failure. Soft, reflective tone. When I finally crawled into my tiny apartment that night, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles, and a question bubbled up, one I'd never dared ask myself before. Soft, thoughtful tone. Do I even need them? For the first time in my life, the answer didn't scare me. Because if they didn't want me, maybe it was time I stopped begging to belong. Maybe it was time I built something they could never touch. Calm, determined tone. I didn't know how yet, no blueprint, no guide, just a spark, a dangerous one. And then I made a promise to myself. 4 years. 4 years to turn their erasure into my ultimate revenge, my ultimate comeback. Soft suspense, reflective tone. But before I could even start planning, one unexpected notification on my phone revealed a family secret that none of us were supposed to know, and it was going to change everything. The next few weeks after that Mother's Day Eve were strange. I walked around Richmond, Virginia, feeling invisible in a world that was supposed to be my family. Every time I saw Vanessa or Brad, there was a bubble around them that I wasn't allowed into. Dinner invitations, weekend trips, group chats, family emails, everything except me. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern, a deliberate erasure. I started paying attention, noticing the little things. How Dad would hand Vanessa the car keys with a smile while I carried the groceries up the stairs. How Mom would praise Brad's success at work while I got a polite nod at best. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I wasn't trying to compete. I just wanted to belong, to be acknowledged, to feel like I mattered. And that's when I realized it wasn't me. It was them. They had chosen who I was allowed to be in this family, their rules, their hierarchy, their judgment. I began documenting it, little notes in my phone, observations about who got invited, who got praised, who got ignored. Patterns emerged, patterns of favoritism, exclusion, and cold indifference. And with every note, with every observation, I felt something grow inside me. Not anger, not bitterness, something stronger, clarity, control, a quiet power that whispered, if they won't see me now, I'll make them notice later. I started spending evenings alone in my tiny apartment, planning, not revenge, not yet, just building, strengthening myself, skills, knowledge, a life outside of their reach. I took walks through Carytown, exploring every corner, every little shop I had never noticed before. I visited small cafes, bookstores, and galleries. I watched people who seemed free, alive, not trapped by expectation. I realized that my invisibility wasn't a curse. It was a chance to build a life that belonged only to me. No judgment, no hierarchy, no rules. But every now and then, a notification would pop up, a picture from a family trip I wasn't invited to, a message celebrating an achievement I wasn't mentioned in, a reminder that while I was building my life, they were moving on without me. And that's when I made a decision. I would spend the next 4 years transforming this exclusion into power. I would take every slight, every snub, every erased moment and turn it into fuel. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I had a plan forming, a quiet, unstoppable plan. And then the first real clue appeared, a detail my family thought I hadn't noticed, a secret so small it was almost invisible. But I saw it, and seeing it changed everything. I realized then this was bigger than favoritism, bigger than exclusion. There were secrets in this family, secrets that could change everything I thought I knew. And in that moment, I knew. My journey was no longer just about being seen. It was about uncovering the truth and making them pay for every time they erased me. But I didn't know yet how dangerous that truth would be, or how close it would come to destroying everything I thought I loved. Weeks passed, but I was no longer the invisible Emily Carson. Not entirely. I had started noticing patterns, keeping tabs, building a quiet awareness of my family's world and my place outside it. Then it happened. The first real clue, something my family thought I would overlook. A detail so small, yet so telling. It was an old family album online, photos from a vacation that Vanessa and Brad had taken, without me. But in the background of one image, barely visible, was a hint of something unusual. A small piece of paper sticking out from Brad's backpack, a receipt, an address, something no one had meant for me to see. I stared at it for hours, over and over, every detail, every angle, until the smallest clue became a thread I could pull. And when I pulled it, everything started to unravel. A pattern, a secret, something my family had been keeping, even from themselves, maybe. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just exclusion. It was something bigger, something hidden in plain sight, a truth that, if revealed, could shake the family to its core. I didn't tell anyone, not Rachel, not friends. I knew this needed careful handling, patience, observation, timing. I started taking notes, tiny files on my laptop, names, dates, events, odd coincidences that didn't make sense until they did. I felt a spark of power I hadn't felt before. Control, knowledge, the ability to act while they remained blind. I wandered the streets of Richmond late at night thinking. Carytown, Shako Slip, the James River waterfront. Everywhere I went, I visualized the pieces connecting, the puzzle forming. And each night, I felt it growing, the plan, the preparation, the inevitability. I also realized that they underestimated me. Every assumption they had made about me, about my place in the family, was wrong, and that mistake would be my advantage. And then another clue arrived, a message sent by mistake, or maybe by someone who wanted to be caught. It contained information my family thought was safe, private, invisible. But I saw it, I read it, I remembered it. And suddenly, what had been whispers and hints became undeniable. There was a secret buried deep in the Carson family, one that would explain years of favoritism, exclusion, and cold indifference. I realized then that my journey was no longer just about being recognized. It was about uncovering a truth that would give me leverage, power, and finally, justice. But I also understood this. The closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it would become, and there was no turning back. I wasn't just Emily Carson, the erased daughter. I was Emily Carson, the observer, the strategist, the one who had seen what no one else noticed. And as I closed my laptop that night, I knew one thing for certain. The first discovery was just the beginning, and what I was about to uncover next would change everything. After that first discovery, everything felt different. I wasn't just a background character anymore. I was a detective in my own life, quietly piecing together a puzzle that no one wanted me to see. I began retracing old family events in my mind, birthdays, vacations, dinner parties, moments that seemed ordinary but now looked suspicious. Every laugh, every compliment, every slight, it all started making sense. I noticed how certain envelopes vanished before reaching me, how emails were subtly edited, how conversations were carefully curated to exclude my voice. Vanessa got accolades, Brad got inheritance, and me, I got silence. It wasn't fair. It wasn't justifiable. And yet, that unfairness became my motivation. Every omission, every cold shoulder, every erased moment fueled a determination I had never felt before. I started connecting dots. The vacation photos, the hidden receipts, the family albums, little breadcrumbs left behind, intentionally or not. And with each connection, I felt my confidence grow, my sense of power return. I spent evenings at my tiny apartment, laptop open, notebooks scattered, tracing financial records, cross-referencing events, piecing together timelines. The more I found, the more I realized this wasn't just about favoritism or neglect. There was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. I kept thinking about my parents, Margaret and Thomas Carson, how carefully they curated their image, their family, the world. Everything had a purpose. Every smile, every compliment, every family moment was calculated, and I had been invisible, intentionally. Then came the email, and misdirected message, an attachment my mother had meant for Vanessa. It contained details about a trust fund, documents about family business decisions, secrets they assumed I would never see. But I did. And just like that, I realized the scale of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just exclusion. It was control, manipulation, a family built on appearances, loyalty, and secrecy. I made a decision in that moment. I would not be a victim. I would not be ignored. I would use what I had discovered, the secrets, the patterns, the mistakes, to build a life they could never touch. I spent weeks quietly researching, learning, planning. I studied their businesses, their routines, their habits. Every small detail became ammunition. Every unnoticed moment became my advantage. And as I worked, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Hope that I could create something bigger than their judgment, their exclusion, their erasure. I was no longer the invisible Emily Carson. I was Emily Carson, the observer, the strategist, the one who had seen everything they thought they hid. And just when I thought I had uncovered all the pieces, a new revelation appeared. Something so unexpected, so dangerous, that it threatened to undo everything I had carefully observed and planned. I realized then my journey was only beginning. The deeper I dug, the more I understood. The truth wasn't just hidden, it was buried beneath layers of family pride, deception, and lies. And I knew one thing for certain: I would find it, I would use it, and I would finally ensure that being invisible would never happen to me again. But I had no idea how explosive the next discovery would be, or how close it would bring me to danger I never imagined. By this point, I was no longer the same Emily Carson who had cried silently in her apartment. I had observed, I had recorded, I had learned, and now it was time to act. The first move wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be flashy, it couldn't be. My family was always watching, always judging, always controlling. If I made a mistake, they would notice and erase me again. So I started small: emails, notes, quiet research into the family business, little details that didn't seem important to anyone else, but to me they were pieces of a puzzle, a map I could follow to gain leverage. I watched Vanessa closely, how she handled her social media, how she flaunted her success without realizing how predictable she was. I watched Brad, how he relied on habits, routines, and the family's blind trust, and I noticed the cracks, the things they assumed I would never see. Then came the first real opportunity: a misdirected message from Dad, one he had sent to Vanessa but accidentally copied my email address. It contained financial figures, upcoming meetings, and a plan that was supposed to stay private. I froze. My heart raced. This was it, my chance to turn knowledge into power. I didn't act impulsively. I saved the email. I studied it. I understood the risks. I understood the consequences. And I smiled, quietly, to myself. For the first time in years, I felt a surge of control. Not arrogance, not revenge, not yet. Control, awareness, a sense that I was no longer invisible. I began mapping out my plan, Every piece of information, every mistake my family had made, every secret they assumed was safe, it all became part of a strategy, and for the first time, I realized something powerful. They underestimated me. They always had. Late at night, I walked along the James River, city lights reflecting on the water, thinking. The plan formed slowly, step by step. Carefully, strategically. This was not a game. This was precision. I also realized I needed allies, quiet ones, trusted people outside their world who could help me verify information, watch patterns, and provide perspective. I started reaching out, carefully, testing boundaries, building a support system they wouldn't suspect. And then came a second clue. A small financial irregularity in the family business, something that looked accidental but wasn't, a breadcrumb, a hint that someone had tried to hide the truth. I saved it, I noted it, and I knew it would be useful. Each discovery made me stronger, each observation sharpened my mind, and with each small victory, I felt my confidence grow. I was no longer just surviving, I was preparing. But I also understood the risk. If they discovered my notes, my research, my awareness, they would see me as a threat, and a threat to the Carsons is not tolerated. So I moved in silence, invisible, careful, calculating. The invisible Emily Carson had become the watcher, the strategist, the one holding the first real advantage. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next move I made would escalate everything. It would bring me closer to the truth and dangerously close to the secrets my family had buried for years. By now, my life had changed in ways my family couldn't see. I wasn't just Emily Carson anymore. I was a strategist, quietly tracking every detail, every movement, every slip. It started small, noticing patterns in Vanessa's social media posts, Brad's business updates, even Mom's carefully curated emails. Every post, every announcement, every photo, it was a breadcrumb, a trail, a map that no one else seemed to notice, but I did. Then I started connecting them. The misdirected email from Dad, the hidden receipts in the vacation photos, little inconsistencies that, when pieced together, revealed something bigger, something my family thought was invisible. I kept a notebook, a digital journal, a timeline of events, dates, and secrets. I cross-referenced everything, and slowly, a pattern emerged. The Carsons had built a world of control. Everything was measured. Every word, every action, every decision designed to maintain appearances and suppress dissent. And I had been excluded, deliberately, erased, overlooked. But now the pieces were in my hands, and the more I studied them, the more I realized the Carsons had underestimated me. Every assumption they made about my invisibility, my compliance, my lack of ambition was wrong. I began visiting the Richmond archives, public records, property deeds, business filings. Every small detail, every overlooked transaction, it was all a clue. And with each discovery, my understanding deepened. I even started visiting places they frequented, the country club, their favorite coffee shop, local galleries, not to spy, not exactly, but to watch, to observe, to understand, and each observation added another piece to the puzzle. One evening, as I sat in my apartment staring at the James River lights reflecting on the water, I realized something crucial. This wasn't just about exclusion or favoritism anymore. It was about control, and control could be challenged if you knew the right moves. I started thinking in terms of leverage, small secrets that could be turned into power, patterns that could be exploited, mistakes that could be revealed. Every unnoticed detail was an opportunity. And then the breakthrough came. A message from a distant relative, someone my family thought was loyal and quiet. It contained information about financial decisions, family assets, and secrets, things my family assumed I would never see. I read it carefully, memorized every detail, and smiled quietly. For the first time, I realized the true scale of the Carsons' world and the scale of the advantage I now held. I was no longer just observing, I was preparing. Every clue, every connection, every pattern, a weapon in the making, and soon they would see that the invisible Emily Carson was gone. But even as I pieced it all together, I didn't know the next discovery would be the one that changed everything, the one that could either give me ultimate control or put me in danger I never imagined. By now, my life had transformed. I was no longer the invisible Emily Carson, the one who quietly accepted her place at the edge of the family. I had information, I had clarity, and slowly, I had control. Every family gathering, every post, every conversation, it all started to reveal a hidden pattern. The Carsons thought their world was perfect, their secrets safe, but I was watching, listening, noticing. Then came the discovery that changed everything. A folder on a shared family drive. It was labeled innocently, financial notes, but inside was something far bigger than I expected. Receipts, contracts, emails, connections between family members and business associates I had never known existed. Everything aligned in ways that made me realize the family's hierarchy, their favoritism, even their subtle manipulations were all part of a larger design. And in that moment, I saw it, the pattern that no one else could see, the method behind the favoritism, the reason behind the exclusion. The truth was bigger than personal grudges. It was a plan to control everything. I began mapping the information, connecting dots, creating timelines. Vanessa's achievements, Brad's inheritances, my erasure, it all fit. And the more I mapped it, the more I realized the Carsons had underestimated me. Determined. I wasn't just observing anymore. I was preparing, strategizing, learning how to turn the hidden pattern into leverage without them ever knowing. Every late night, I'd walk Richmond streets, replaying scenarios in my head, imagining how I could use this information to finally claim what I deserved. And each night, the plan became clearer. But I also understood the risk. If the Carsons discovered I had seen their hidden design, if they realized I understood the method behind the madness, I could be in danger. And that risk only fueled me. It reminded me that power is only useful when wielded wisely, and patience is the most dangerous weapon of all. I started creating safe backups, hidden files, detailed notes on every financial anomaly, every secret meeting, every hidden communication. I was building a foundation they could never destroy, a foundation for the moment I would finally step out of the shadows. And then the first real confrontation arrived, not verbal, not visible, but through an unexpected family message, a comment slipped in public designed to assert dominance, to remind me of my place. It backfired because I was ready. I saw the message for what it was, not a threat, but a confirmation. Confirmation that I had understood the hidden pattern, confirmation that I was finally seeing the Carsons for who they really were. I realized then this was no longer about observation, this was about preparation, about timing, about turning every secret, every misstep, every assumption into my advantage. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next discovery would bring the Carsons' world closer to collapse than they could ever imagine, and it was going to happen sooner than anyone expected. By this point, I knew one thing for certain. The Carsons' world wasn't as perfect as they believed. Every action, every secret, every subtle exclusion, it all followed a pattern, and now I held the map. I spent days going through family communications, old emails, private messages, everything they assumed was hidden. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was manipulation, control, power disguised as normal family dynamics. Then I noticed something subtle, a link between Vanessa's social media announcements and Brad's business decisions, little overlaps that seemed random at first, but weren't. And in that overlap, a clue about a hidden account, something my parents thought was invisible. I smiled quietly. The web was tightening, and I was holding the threads. I realized that patience was my greatest weapon. Every move I made, every observation, every note I took built a foundation for a moment they would never see coming. And with each discovery, I grew stronger, more confident, more unstoppable. I wasn't just gathering information, I was learning the rules of their world, learning their weaknesses, discovering how far I could go before they even noticed. And slowly, deliberately, I was becoming a threat. I spent nights compiling timelines, financial notes, and hidden connections, creating a blueprint not just to prove their favoritism, but to expose their secrets and reclaim the life I had been denied. Yet I knew I had to be careful. If they discovered I was tracking their patterns, observing their secrets, connecting the dots, it could backfire. Danger was always close. But I had learned something crucial. Knowledge is power, and patience is a weapon stronger than anger. Every step I took now was calculated, precise, and deliberate. And just as I began to feel I had the upper hand, a new clue appeared, one that would challenge everything I thought I knew and force me to decide just how far I was willing to go to uncover the truth. Everything had been building quietly. Months of observation, investigation, and careful note-taking had led me here. And now, the first real confrontation was unavoidable. It wasn't a shouting match, not yet. It was subtle, almost invisible, a slip of information during a family Zoom call, a casual comment from Vanessa about a decision I had already discovered in my research. At first, I hesitated. Was I imagining it? Was it coincidence? But no, I had been tracking patterns too long, too carefully. This was deliberate, a test, or maybe a trap. I stayed calm. I smiled politely, nodded, and made no sudden movements. Inside, my mind raced. Every observation, every clue, every hidden detail, it was all connecting now. This confrontation wasn't about proving myself yet. It was about understanding their reactions. How would they respond if I showed awareness? What cracks would appear in their perfect facade? I noted Vanessa's expression, Brad's posture, Mom's subtle frown. It was all there. The Carsons couldn't hide their discomfort from someone paying attention, someone who had learned their rhythm. Later that evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing notes. Every detail from the call, every expression, every tone, every word. And slowly, the first real picture emerged, the vulnerabilities they never intended me to see. I began planning my next steps. The confrontation wasn't the end, it was a signal, a warning, a spark, and I would use it wisely. I realized something important. The Carsons assumed I was powerless, that I would remain silent and invisible, but their arrogance, their underestimation of me, was now my advantage. I started mapping reactions, comparing them with past patterns. Every subtle shift, every hesitation, a clue to their hidden motives, their secrets, and their fears. And then a second slip occurred, a careless text from Dad to Vanessa containing information he thought was private. It confirmed a secret I had only suspected. The Carsons were protecting more than appearances. They were hiding something crucial. I stored the message. I cross-referenced it with everything else I had discovered, and I began to see the full pattern, the scale of what had been hidden for years. I wasn't just planning a comeback anymore. I was preparing to expose the truth, and the first confrontation had taught me one thing. They were vulnerable. Their control depended on invisibility, and now I was no longer invisible. And as I closed my laptop that night, I realized the next step was critical. One wrong move and everything could collapse, for me or for them. But one right move, and the Carsons' world would never be the same again. The pieces were all in place. Every note, every observation, every hidden clue had led me to this moment. The truth behind the Carsons' world was finally within my grasp. It started with a folder hidden deep in the family cloud, documents no one had expected me to find, financial statements, legal papers, emails, connections, everything pointing to decisions made behind closed doors, decisions that explained years of favoritism, exclusion, and secrecy. I read through the files slowly, carefully, absorbing every detail. It wasn't just about wealth or inheritance, it was control. Control over perceptions, over appearances, over who belonged and who didn't, and I had proof. I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. This was my moment. Not revenge yet, not confrontation, just clarity. The clarity that comes from understanding the full picture. I realized that everything my mother and father had done, every slight, every exclusion, every calculated praise for Vanessa and Brad, was part of a design, and now I could see it. Every manipulation, every hidden agenda, transparent to me. For the first time, I felt a sense of control, not loud, not public, quiet, steady, deliberate. I could act, I could plan, I could reclaim my place on my own terms. Soft suspense, reflective tone. I thought back to all the small clues, the misdirected emails, the slips in conversation, the hidden receipts. Every tiny detail mattered, and each one had built a foundation for this revelation. Soft, empowering tone. I knew I couldn't rush. The Carsons were powerful, cunning, and used to control, but patience was my ally. Every move I made from this point forward would be precise, deliberate, unstoppable. Reflective, tense tone. Late nights in my apartment became planning sessions, diagrams, timelines, notes, spreadsheets. Everything organized, cross-referenced, ready for the moment I would finally take control. Soft suspense, observational tone. I revisited old events in my mind, family dinners, vacations, parties, all the moments I had felt invisible. Now I could see the strategy behind them, and I realized their power depended on me remaining unaware. Empowering, directing tone. I smiled quietly. They had underestimated me. They had assumed invisibility meant compliance, silence, weakness, and that mistake was now my advantage. Soft suspense, reflective tone. I knew the next step would be risky. Revealing the truth could backfire, but staying silent would mean remaining erased, invisible, powerless, and I had already decided I would never accept that again. Empowering, dramatic tone, so I prepared, quietly, strategically, every piece of information, every pattern, every secret, my arsenal, and I felt the thrill of power for the first time in my life. Soft suspense, re-hook tone. But just as I thought I understood everything, a single document surfaced, one detail I hadn't expected, and it had the potential to change everything. The Carsons had kept one secret even I hadn't uncovered yet, and that secret would test everything I had prepared for. By this point, the story had grown far beyond my expectations. Months of observation, research, and quiet planning had led me to a revelation no one in the family could have anticipated, and it changed everything. It started with a single document, buried deep in the family archives, a ledger, a note, something they assumed I would never see. And as I read it, I realized the Carsons had been hiding more than favoritism or exclusion. They had been hiding a secret about power, about control, about the very foundation of their wealth and influence. And suddenly, the reason behind every slight, every manipulation, every erased memory became crystal clear. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. I had uncovered something so significant, so explosive, it could topple the carefully constructed world they had maintained for decades. And yet, I had to stay calm. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about understanding, strategy, using what I had learned wisely. The power in my hands was immense, but so was the risk. I revisited every clue, every observation, every hidden detail I had collected, and slowly a plan formed. A plan that would allow me to reclaim my place, expose the truth, and finally ensure that being invisible would never happen to me again. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. I had uncovered something so significant, so explosive, it could topple the carefully constructed world they had maintained for decades. And yet, I had to stay calm. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about understanding, strategy, using what I had learned wisely. The power in my hands was immense, but so was the risk. I revisited every clue, every observation, every hidden detail I had collected, and slowly a plan formed. A plan that would allow me to reclaim my place, expose the truth, and finally ensure that being invisible would never happen to me again. I prepared myself mentally, emotionally, every scenario considered, every angle planned. This wasn't just about uncovering secrets anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my name, my place in the world. And so I took a deep breath, ready to act. Every piece of knowledge, every observation, every detail, my advantage. The Carsons had built a house of secrets, and now I held the key to every room. But I had no idea just how explosive the next move would be, or how far it would push the Carsons and me beyond everything we had ever known. The ultimate revelation was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. It all came together in a way I never thought possible. Months of observation, research, and quiet planning had built to this moment. The Carsons' secrets, their control, their favoritism, everything was laid bare. The first public moment of truth came quietly, deliberately. I chose the setting, I chose the timing, and I revealed the information strategically, carefully, with precision. Not to humiliate, not to punish, but to reclaim my life, my name, my dignity. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Free from invisibility, free from manipulation, free from the weight of being overlooked. I had transformed myself into someone my family could no longer ignore. I watched their reactions, subtle shifts, quiet gasps, moments of disbelief. Vanessa's smug confidence faltered. Brad's posture stiffened. Mom's smile wavered. And Dad, well, he finally realized that the girl they erased had returned stronger than ever. But the triumph wasn't just about them. It was about me, about the years I spent learning, observing, and building a life that couldn't be touched by their favoritism or their control, about the quiet strength I discovered inside myself. I stood tall and I spoke, not with anger, not with spite, but with clarity. Every word measured, every point deliberate, and I saw the truth in their eyes. They had underestimated me, and that underestimation had been my greatest advantage. Afterwards, the house felt different. Empty rooms, quiet halls, no strings attached to manipulate me anymore. I had reclaimed not only my space, but my power, and for the first time, the world felt like mine. I realized something essential. Family isn't just blood. Family isn't just shared names or appearances at parties. Family is respect. Family is love. Family is choosing those who see you, who value you, who make you feel visible. And so, I built a new family, a chosen family, a supportive network, people who encouraged me, celebrated me, and reminded me of my worth every day. I was no longer the invisible Emily Carson. I was Emily Carson, unstoppable, undeniable, empowered. I walk through Portland now, through Richmond, through familiar streets, but with new eyes. I see opportunity. I see potential. I see freedom. I see the life I chose for myself, built piece by piece, one careful step at a time. And my message is simple. Invisibility doesn't mean weakness. Being overlooked doesn't define your worth. Your life, your voice, your value, they belong to you. Always. If my story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more untold stories of resilience, courage, and transformation. Remember, the invisible can become unstoppable, and the erased can rise to claim everything they were denied.